Oh, hi. Hey, welcome. Today we're talking about emotional eating and the meaning of food. I think you're going to like this reading. It's not one in our textbook, it's one of PDF files. But what does food mean for us? And why do we eat so much as a nation? And not just our nation, a lot of nations have a lot of emotional eating. In this article by Camella and Tucker, we explore some of these deep relationships of eating and culture. For instance, just think about how food is tied to so many things in our culture. For instance, holidays. You can't name a holiday that isn't somehow associated with food. Christmas for your family probably has certain types of traditional food. Some people do nachos on Christmas Eve, or some have a Christmas ham, but there's always eating involved. Most Christmas stockings have candy in them. Then you got, of course, Easter with chocolate and candy. You've got Halloween, which is, again, about candy. Even St. Patrick's Day, maybe corned beef and cabbage. Most of these have food. Thanksgiving is a lot about food. So we mark holidays by food. We mark our good times and bad times. So we celebrate. You've had a good ball game, let's go out for ice cream. Our birthdays, we go out for dinner. We might have a birthday cake. So we celebrate stuff. Something goes well at work. Everyone goes out maybe for dinner, for pizza. And a lot of places they go out for alcohol. They go to the bar together. But a lot of times those celebrations center around food. But also in our bad times, a lot of people when they're feeling lonely or feeling depressed turn to food. So we'll be by themselves killing a half gallon of ice cream or a bunch of nachos in front of the TV and just overeating. So good times, bad times, social times. It's hard for a lot of us to get together with a friend without there being food. We'll say, well, let's go grab coffee together. Oh, let's go get a donut together. Let's do lunch. Let's do supper. Hey, are you available for breakfast? Let's go grab a snack together. Very seldom do we get together socially without any food present. If you showed up at a friend's house for a party and there was nothing to eat, there's just chairs and a sofa to sit down and talk, that would feel odd to a lot of us, at least without being offered something to drink. So food is so pivotal in our social times, in all of our ceremonies, religious or otherwise. You have your wedding ceremonies. Well, there's got to be a wedding cake, and most weddings now feed a full meal. Even funerals have funeral dinners. About every single faith, Christian or otherwise, has celebrations that focus on food. We've got rites of passage. In this country, turning 21 for a lot of people means having their first alcohol, going out, perhaps getting drunk. Food, beverage, tied into these rites of passage. Even in our entertainment. In fact, for a lot of us, the eating is the entertainment. It's just something fun to do. We enjoy cooking shows. Think about how many cooking and eating shows there are on TV that talk about different restaurants across the country. All the famous chefs and the cooks and all the drama with trying to make it to be that next big chef. All these things focus around this. We even have the Food Network. So food and entertainment. We even have eating contests for crying out loud. It's also tied to sports. We have ball game food. My wife likes to go to see the White Sox play more than the Cubs and beyond just the baseball. She says that U.S. Cellular Field has better food than you would see at the Cubs stadium. She likes the nachos there a little bit better. She thinks the hot dogs are a little better quality. So she knows when she's going up there, she's going to probably start with the hot dogs. She'll probably move into nachos. She'll move into some cotton candy, usually with a little bit of coffee afterwards, maybe even a little bit of ice cream, all within 9 innings. A lot of ball games have certain types of food associated with them. You get the point. Food is everywhere in our culture, and almost all these things I've just mentioned have nothing to do with nutrition. In fact, almost all those have to do with emotions. When we're happy, we eat. When we're sad, we eat. When we're bored, we eat. It goes on and on and on, often tied to emotions. When we're stressed out, we're just going through the snacks, the junk food. Super happy, let's celebrate. Often tied to emotions. So now we're getting at this idea of emotional eating. And Camilla and Tucker have this screening, which when you look at some of these questions, you can probably identify. I mean, when I look at these, do you eat a lot of food in a short period of time? Yeah, sometimes I definitely do. Not regularly, but I can put it away. Do you eat, do you sometimes feel out of control when you eat? Definitely, especially when they're like gummy bears from Sweet Street. Oh my, I will stop by there and buy a quarter pound. I don't buy more than that because I know I'm going to eat them all often before I even get home. Am I proud of that? I am not proud of that. Am I out of control? Yeah. Maybe you have something like that too. Do you eat when you're not hungry? So obviously we need food for sustenance when we're hungry, but what about when we're not hungry? If we find ourselves eating when we're not hungry, well, we could be emotionally eating. Do we eat to soothe our feelings or to distract ourselves from uncomfortable thoughts? If so, we're probably emotionally eating. Do you eat in secret? So again, you're not hungry, but you're by yourself, so there's not even a social factor there. If you can answer a few of those as yes, chances are you're emotionally eating. And you may not have a problem with that per se. It may not be resulting in like addictive or obsessive behavior. It may not be resulting in obsessive weight gain, excessive weight gain, especially at this stage of your lives. But it could become a problem, according to Camilla and Tucker. So they define emotional eating as really any kind of eating we're doing that's not tied to physical necessary sustenance. When you look at it that way, a lot of us are doing a lot of emotional eating, especially in the United States of America, where we have this one of the highest obesity rates of the world because we do so much emotional eating. And they talk about this vicious cycle of emotional eating. So some of us are feeling bad about ourselves for some reason, which again leads to an emotional response, whether that's sort of a loneliness, a sadness, a frustration, stress. Then we turn to food to satisfy that feeling. But then shortly after eating that food, we feel guilty for having eaten so much food, which leads to increased stress. So you can see that little cycle, not a particularly healthy one. But so why do we do it? Well, one of the reasons is there are a lot of short-term effects of emotional eating. Uh, Eating brings a sense of bodily, physiological satisfaction. If I eat a big bowl of chips, I feel a sense of satisfaction inside bodily, at least temporarily. And that can sort of mask some other emotions that I was feeling. If I was feeling anger or isolation, or that sense of bodily satisfaction can sort of mask those other emotions temporarily. It can also increase my blood sugar levels, which can also create a numbing on some of my emotions that were bothering me previously. The continual eating can even be a sense of distraction away from some of those issues I should be dealing with, which is a short-term benefit. But also, if I'm upset, lonely, I might turn to comfort food. Interestingly, a lot of folks find Steak and Shake as one of their comfort food restaurants, especially people maybe even a little bit older than you, that it kind of reminds them a little bit of old school, a little bit of maybe the 50s and 60s. So for your parents, Steak and Shake is probably more of a comfort food place, but you've got your places that maybe brings back good memories. Maybe it's a place that you used to go with your family for celebrations, or a place as a high school hangout. It could be a drive-in restaurant. For you, it's going to be different than for me, but those comfort foods can trigger this temporary emotional satisfaction to hide maybe or mask some of those more unpleasant emotions. And some foods are going to spike our endorphin levels, kind of like taking certain drugs do, which kind of bring this mood stabilization or even a sense of happiness temporarily. But the problem is, of course, that those are short-term effects. And we have this weird cultural paradox. What that means is, in this country, on the one hand, we value eating and eating a lot, eating all the time. On the other hand, we value thinness, so much so. And that's a little hard to justify, a country being obsessed with being thin, So every other ad, it seems, on TV or in magazines is about weight loss, it's about exercise equipment, it's about gym uh, memberships, it's about diet pills, it's about all kinds of different equipment we can have to try to flatten our abs, to lose that tummy, lose that fat. But on the other hand, the other restaurants are advertising, or the other commercials are advertising food products. So it makes it really, really tough in this culture when we have those two very diverse, paradoxical concepts going on. Can you relate to this quote straight from Camella and Tucker that the range of emotional eating issues includes eating when we're not hungry, eating when we're stressed, eating in secret, eating foods perceived as forbidden? Maybe it's like ice cream for you. Oh, I feel guilty eating that. But sometimes you think, doggone it, I've worked hard, I'm stressed out, I just got broken up with, I'm going to have that ice cream. Or grazing. So we're just kind of mindlessly eating at a big buffet, which is easy to do, frankly, in college cafeteria style eating. Or snacking throughout the day. Some of us who have jobs, the 8-hour jobs, have snacks in different drawers. We'll sit here with a handful of peanuts every few minutes, and that adds up to enormous calories and fat. Or we eat to soothe or forget feelings. Again, if we can relate to those, Camilla and Tucker would suggest that we're having some issues with emotional eating. So in their clinic, they offer help to people that really have some fairly severe emotional eating. And so Camilla and Tucker review some of the more common treatment options and give pros and cons of some of these. So one of these is dieting. Well, that makes sense, right? Except they say dieting is often an ineffective way of dealing with emotional eating. Frankly, a lot of people just have a hard time sticking with a diet. So there's all kinds of crazy diets people get on. They lose some weight quickly. They gain it all back, if not more. And so very few diets out there are overly effective, especially if it's an emotional eating thing, because the emotions are still there. So they say dieting is not all that strong. What about pharmacology? In other words, taking drugs, medicines? Because there's all kinds of diet pills. They say those overall do not work. They're highly ineffective and can be dangerous. They said that some drugs would be helpful if, for instance, I'm eating because I'm depressed. Well, then I could take depression medicine to relieve some of my depressive symptoms, or anxiety medicine if I'm just struggling with a chemical imbalance creating unnatural and unhealthy anxiety. If I could take medication to just stabilize my anxiety, that may eliminate my need for emotional eating. So again, the drugs aren't to lose weight, burn fat. It's to deal with the other problems that are pushing me toward or triggering the emotional eating. They said that can be effective if that's what's triggering our problems. Also, just general exercise instruction. They said it's certainly a part of the emotional eating, because the other side of eating is taking care of the body through exercise. They said that's not a fix-all, because that's not really fixing the eating end, but it's helping deal with some of the symptoms of overeating, i.e. the weight gain. Another they said is pretty effective is cognitive behavioral therapy. What that means is seeing a counselor, seeing a psychotherapist who's really just trying to challenge some of our irrational thinking that often leads to emotional eating. For instance, the feeling that I need to be perfect. So if I'm a high school ball player, college basketball player, for instance, and I feel like somehow I've got to be perfect in every single game, or I'm just a horrible person, horrible athlete, never going to make it. It's kind of like a person saying, I've got to be like Michael Jordan, or I'm a loser. Well, Michael Jordan was a freak of nature. Most of us are not going to be like Mike. That's a horrible fallacy if we're really living within some of those harsh things that we put on ourselves. So a good counselor or therapist is going to challenge some of that irrational thinking. Why would you think you have to be perfect? What would happen if you turned in an assignment that was not 100%? Would there be a tomorrow? What message would that send about yourselves? Would you really lose your parents' love? If your parents are putting this kind of pressure on you, is that a rational thing? And so there's asking questions like that to try to deal with some of the irrational thoughts that are leading to some of those stressful emotions, which lead to emotional eating. A fifth one is interpersonal therapy. So that deals with relational issues. So some of us are having emotional eating issues because we're having a hard time dealing with people. Maybe we're socially awkward. Maybe I just have huge social anxiety. I have a hard time dealing with people. I don't know what to say. I get stressed out. I turn all red. I flush in the face. And so interpersonal therapy is helping people learn some basic people skills, some listening, how to start a conversation, how to have small talk, how to have closure, how not to share everything about myself and just kind of vomit up all kinds of TMI on people. So that can be an effective therapy if that's what's leading to the emotional eating. Another that you probably haven't heard of is dialectical behavioral therapy. My wife, a psychotherapist, had some training in this. And the way she explained it to me is dialectical behavioral therapy doesn't focus on the behavior. Like, for instance, if a person is emotional eating, a person could just say, well, go on a diet, fix the eating. But within dialectical behavioral therapy, they say, no, eating isn't the problem. Eating is like the solution that that person is choosing to deal with an inner problem. Let's deal with the inner problem. Let's not even talk about eating. Let's not even talk about exercise. Let's back up into what's causing the emotional eating. So, I mean, that makes sense. And Camilla and Tucker suggest that can be a very effective type of therapy. Also, marital and family therapy, because most of this happens in family systems. So if I have a really emotional eating problem, I go to this seminar to kind of give me help in these. I get some therapies. Some of my rational thoughts are challenged. I'm given some new paradigms and all this. Then I go back to my home where my wife, say, just cooks huge meals with huge desserts, high fat grams. We have ice cream every night and a Pop-Tart for a snack. In other words, my whole family system is really contributing to this. So Camilla and Tucker suggest to really deal with emotional eating, you have to deal with it at a family level. Maybe the family has to learn you can celebrate without food. You can socialize without eating cake. You can get together and have a conversation, maybe a glass of water, maybe a cup of coffee, maybe some tea. But you don't necessarily have to be chomping on ice cream and hot dogs the whole time. But it's a family issue. Second, the last one is support groups. So in other words, sometimes I think that maybe I'm the only one dealing with this. I feel ashamed of myself. But being a part of a support group lets a person with emotional eating know this is the culture we live in. This is rampant. We all struggle with this. So hearing other people, maybe a group of 8, kind of talking about this can develop better habits, better resolution, more confidence. So they suggest that as an effective thing. The last they suggest is spiritual care. So for a lot of us, we're going to be strengthened through this. The more I can surrender some of these problems to the Lord and really implore His help in this, knowing there are a lot of things I can't do myself, and God designed me to be ill-equipped to deal with my problems. If I could deal with them all, I wouldn't need a savior. So they say incorporating the Lord into this can be a really effective part and a necessary component for some of us dealing with the emotional eating, which could also then deal with why I'm feeling some of these negative emotions, because maybe I don't have some of that peace and joy that comes from the Lord. And another better way of approaching emotional eating, and like, well, how thin do I want to get? They suggest a healthier approach is just healthy BMI, body mass index. So based on body type, some of us are never going to be rail thin and shouldn't be. Some of us have bigger bones, bigger body types, and we're going to carry more weight, and it's healthy for us. So rather than just think I need to look like this person or this model or this person in the television commercial, I need to figure out my own body mass index. If you're interested, just Google body mass index calculator. Super easy. You can come up with your ideal body mass index, which points to a weight that's probably healthy for you, uh, which may not be the same weight as someone of a similar height as you or age of you. So that they say that's a healthier way to approach this. Well, friends, I hope you've had fun listening to this lecture, and I hope you become more conscious of your own emotional eating. And I bet if you're like me, it's something you do deal with. We have to be more conscious of this. It's certainly part of the water that we swim in this U.S. culture. See you later.